The time is 8:45 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Anjana Dodangoda and read by Tilani Pires. The headlines. The President says the government's efforts over the past 9 months to revive Sri Lanka's economy. The Minister of Power and Energy assures no fuel shortage. The Central Bank Governor optimistic on banks will reduce lending rates after policy rate cut. Special train service from tomorrow in conjunction with the Poson Festival. The UK Defence Advisors call on the Commander of the Navy. Heavy metal testing for imported dried fish, sprats and fruits mandatory from today. And on international news, Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko sentenced to 2 years in prison. And on sports billiards, M. Taha proved his supremacy and bagged the national billiard crown. President Ranil Wickremesinghe delivering a special statement a short while ago addressing the government's efforts over the past 9 months to revive Sri Lanka's economy said the country's economy is gradually recovering from the crisis thanks to correct policies including the collective efforts of the people. In his special address, the President Wickremesinghe said the country is gradually coming out of the difficult times. Due to precise economic decisions taken on the recent past, Sri Lanka has gained progress. The President expressed his gratitude to the citizens for showing during the difficult time in order to achieve a steady and sustainable development. An innovative approach is vital. Some elements engaged in conventional politics are trying to stop economic progression. Such elements are attempting to spread unnecessary fear in society. They try to hide behind infamous slogan of country is to be sold. People have to be mindful of such deceiving elements. The President further noted in future there will be more changes. Such challenges must also be overcome. Some people have forgotten difficulties country faced during the last 2 years. Sri Lanka joined hands with international agencies such as IMF and World Bank to overcome difficulties. Neighbouring countries also extended their hand of goodwill. New tax policy has contributed an additional revenue of 210 billion rupees to the country. The whole island is benefited in this commitment and during the difficult time. Outlining the government's efforts to revive the country's economy, President Wickremesinghe said these economic reforms will lead to decreased cost of living, improved standards of living, relief for the poor, and a culture of transparency. The licensed commercial banks are expected to bring down the lending rate for businesses now that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has relaxed its monetary policy stance, CBSL Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says. Addressing the special press briefing held in Colombo to announce the CBSL's monetary policy review today, Dr. Veerasinghe said the inflation is now coming towards the target range much earlier than expected, supported by the currency appreciation, the adjustment in the fuel and petroleum prices and global prices. The central bank today cut the interest rates for the first time in nearly 3 years, lowering the standing lending facility rate, SLFR, and standing deposit facility rate to 14% and 13% respectively. The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, today requested the public not to panic over any fuel shortages as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka IOC have adequate stocks of fuel. In a tweet, he noted that any prevailing shortages are due to the non-placement of orders by respective fuel station owners anticipating a fuel price reduction. The minister emphasized that dealers have been required to maintain a minimum stock of 50% and that he has instructed the CPC to review and suspend the license of fuel stations that had not maintained minimum stocks. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The Railway Department states that around 12 special train journeys will be operating from the 2nd to the 5th of June from the Poson Festival. This special train service will be operating from 1 p.m. on the 2nd of June. Accordingly, a special train will run from Colombo Fort to Anuradhapura on 2nd June at 1 p.m. The department states that a special train will run to Anuradhapura at 4:40 p.m. and a special train from Galle at 8:15 p.m. and on Poya Day, a special train from Colombo Fort at 7:05 a.m. and from Beliatta Station at 7:30 a.m. will be operated. For the return trip, a special train from Anuradhapura to Colombo Fort at 5 p.m. on June 3rd and a special train service from Anuradhapura to Galle at 9:30 p.m. have been added. In addition to this, the Railway Department also states that a special night train service will be operated for the pilgrims who come to visit the Homagama zone. The current defence advisor at the UK High Commission in Colombo, Colonel Paul Clayton, and his successor Colonel Darren Woods, today 1st June 2023, visited the Navy headquarters for a farewell and introductory office call with the Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Vice Admiral Priyantha Pereira. After welcoming the visiting UK defence advisors at the Navy headquarters, a cordial discussion was held between the two parties on several matters of bilateral importance. During the official interaction, the Commander of the Navy expressed his appreciation for the dedication and service of the outgoing UK Defence Advisor, highlighting his valuable contributions in strengthening partnerships. That ends local news to now.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
A meeting between President Ranil Wickremesinghe and International Monetary Fund Deputy Managing Director Kenji Okamura was held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. The discussion primarily focused on the progress of the IMF program between Sri Lanka and the IMF. Attention was also paid to the ongoing debt restructuring negotiations. The State Minister of Finance, Shehan Semasinghe, Senior Advisor to the President on National Security and Chief of the Presidential Staff, Sagla Ratnayaka, Secretary of the Minister of Finance, Mahinda Sirivadana, Central Bank Governor, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, International Monetary Fund Deputy Director, Anne-Marie Galde, and IMF Resident Representative in Sri Lanka, Dr. Sawats Jahan, attended this event. That was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on Watch Light tonight, the Sri Lankan government has made it mandatory to test imported dried fish, sprats and fruits for heavy metals such as lead and arsenic with effect from today. The decision was taken after a survey conducted by the Food Control Administration Unit of the Health Ministry between 2021 and 2022 discovered that certain consignments of imported dried fish, sprats and fruits contain heavy metals, especially lead and arsenic, in large quantities. According to the survey, some imported fruit stocks contain alarming levels of lead and extremely toxic heavy metal. The Food Control Administration Unit has advised the importers to ensure that the amount of heavy metal and arsenic present in dried fish, sprats and fruits brought in from overseas does not exceed the permitted minimum level. Meanwhile, a special contact number 0112 112 718 has been introduced by the Food Control Administration Unit for further inquiries in this regard. That came to you in Watchlight. Moving on with world news and the headlines first. Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko sentenced to 2 years in prison. Dead or alive, Pakistani men trapped in coal mine since May 4th. India's economy picks up speed amid global slowdown. A court in Senegal on Thursday sentenced opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, a candidate in the 2024 presidential election, to 2 years in prison on charges of corrupting youth, but acquitted him of rape and issuing death threats. It also sentenced Sonko's co-accused Nedie Kadi Nedie, the owner of the beauty salon where Sonko was accused of repeatedly abusing an employee, to 2 years imprisonment. The 2-year-old case has deeply divided the West African state and triggered violent protests that have battered its image for stability. Even so, his conviction also appears to threaten his eligibility according to Senegal's electoral code. For nearly a month now, rescue officials in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province have been searching for 2 men trapped inside a coal mine as their anguished families prepare for the worst and demand for their bodies. The 2 coal miners have been trapped since May 4th inside the mine in Duki district, 320 kilometers from Balochistan's capital, Quetta, the hub of Pakistan's coal production. India's economic growth has accelerated to 6.1% in January to March quarter, boosted by government and private capital spending, even as private consumption remained sluggish, government data shows. Wednesday's reading showed India remains one of the fastest growing emerging economies, especially with China post-pandemic recovery stumbling. Back to the world news headlines. Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko sentenced to 2 years in prison. Dead or alive, Pakistani men trapped in coal mines since May 4th. India's economy picks up speed amid global slowdown. That ends World News.
Development News.
Sri Lanka will start 2 floating solar plants as a pilot project with an 8.63 billion won grant from Korea, Cabinet spokesman Minister Bandula Gunawardena said. The floating solar plants will be built in Chandrika Vavar in the Ratnapura district and Kiri Ibban Vavar in the Monaragala district. Each plant will have a capacity of 1 megawatts. The Cabinet of Ministers had given the go-ahead to implement the project with the Korea Institute for Advancement of Technology and for the Minister of Energy to sign the required agreements. That came to you in Development News. Moving on with sports news, billiards, M. Taha proved his supremacy and bagged the national billiard crown when he beat Susantha Vikram by 5-1 frames in the 68th National Billiard Championship 2023 final conducted by the Billiard and Snooker Association of Sri Lanka B and SASL at the Automobile Association of Ceylon AAC table recently. The tournament was sponsored by the AAC. That ends sports news.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Curtin University Business School has announced the launch of a 3-year Bachelor of Business Administration degree at Curtin, Colombo starting in July 2023. Curtin, Colombo is the latest addition to Curtin University's global operations, which encompass campuses in Western Australia, Malaysia, Dubai, Singapore, Mauritius, and over 100 partner institutions. Curtin University has achieved remarkable rankings, currently placed 193rd globally and consistently ranking in the top 1% of universities worldwide. That ends Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
And on economic news, the consumer prices measured by the Colombo Consumer Price Index fell sharp in May in the second consecutive month. Such prices cooled by an outsized amount since the current disinflation path began in October last year. The consumer prices rose by 25.2% in the 12 months through May, down from 35.3% through April, reflecting a faster decline in the inflation print in the last couple of months. That was economic news.
Weather report.
The Meteorology Department says several spells of showers will occur in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central and southern provinces. Fairly heavy showers above 50 millimeters are likely at some places in the Gaul, Matara and Kalutara districts. A few showers will occur in the northwestern province. Showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in the Uva and eastern provinces during the evening or night. That was the weather report, and now to end this news broadcast, the main points once again. The President says the government's efforts over the past 9 months to revive Sri Lanka's economy. The Minister of Power and Energy assures no fuel shortage. The Central Bank Governor optimistic on banks will reduce lending rates after policy rate cut. Special train services from tomorrow in conjunction with the Poson Festival. The UK Defence Advisors call on the Commander of the Navy. Heavy metal testing for imported dried fish, sprats and fruits mandatory from today. And on international news, Senegal opposition leader Ousmane Sonko sentenced to 2 years in prison. And on sports news, billiards, M. Taha proved his supremacy and bagged the national billiard crown. That ends this news broadcast.